this Monday evening. The agenda item that we have right now is the letter regarding Energy East pipeline. So just for a little context, this was done in a private session. It was not on an agenda for a private session. It was a matter that was brought up and voted on. It was discussed by our senior staff last week, who determined that it was a procedural error. That I certainly agree with that, and I'm sure council agrees with that, and an apology was issued. Now, just so we don't get ourselves in this mess again, people are asking, so what are you going to do about this? That's a good question. I don't think that any member of this council would hold up their hand and say that they haven't heard the mayor at meetings on many occasions say that we're not supposed to discuss that. And sometimes unintentionally before a council meeting or a pre-council session, you'll remember me saying this on many occasions, you have to wait until you get into public session before you ask these questions. The public should be aware of this. That being said, you know what, it's not a perfect system. But one thing that has been acknowledged and determined that it's everybody's responsibility, not just mine, it's yours, it's the clerks, it's our staff. So in the future, you can be guaranteed that I'll be holding everybody accountable on this one. And I expect on your side, you'll hold me accountable. And here's how it works. If something is brought up that doesn't pertain to the act as we know it, and I'm sure all council is aware of it, then you just raise your hand with a point of order. Say, Mr. Mayor, this is not on the agenda, doesn't really include the things that it's supposed to. The ruling will be made and it'll be over with. But it's going to take 13 of us to be vigilant, not just one. That sets the stage for where we are right now. As it turns out, and I was quite surprised to find this out, I sent the message out to council today, but on Friday, I was a little confused about this whole issue and how it's unfolding and how it's... So our city staff back-checked to find out just exactly what had happened. And quite surprised to hear that the letter was sent to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. It was a copy of the letter. The original one is here at City Hall. I was also told, and quite surprised, that the Canadian Chamber of Commerce did this survey across the country, and the letters were sent to them. They didn't seem to see that there was really anything that would let the chamber know that everybody was together on one side of this. So then they decided if the letters wouldn't be sent. So last I heard of it, I didn't know it was sent or not sent. I was surprised that it wasn't. So anyway, we're dealing with a letter that was sent to the Prime Minister supporting something that never went to the Prime Minister. It makes the whole issue just that more strange. It is where it is. We are where we are. We acknowledge it was a procedural error. There was an apology. It's not going to happen again. And if it doesn't, then somebody has to be held accountable. That's the warning. And everybody gets a fair warning on this one. Now, I would entertain council that what's your next move on this? We haven't had a meeting on it to decide what we're going to do. Here we are, and I'll take some suggestions from the chair. One of them, go ahead, Randy.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I'm glad to hear the public acknowledgement. I don't believe, however, that we actually apologized. The statement that was released from the city just confirmed that yes, there was a mistake in the process, and everybody makes mistakes, but I thought that our willingness to correct the mistake should have been acted on sooner. We should have given a clear apology, not just a statement that a mistake was made, and we should also have stated at that time that procedures were being put in place to prevent it from happening again. I'm happy to hear that procedures are being put in place to prevent that from happening again. But I also would like to go on record, because I did send a motion for the agenda for tonight's meeting, and somehow that motion that I circulated to the clerk and the deputy clerk disappeared between Wednesday last week when I sent it and today, and then I'm told that according to the procedural rules, which we're now following, the motion was not correct because it didn't follow the idea that the letter would be rescinded. So I think, first of all, even though the letter didn't actually get sent, we should publicly state it was rescinded. Number two, we should apologize officially and publicly to the citizens of Fredericton that the error of procedure took place, we've already confirmed, we should confirm for the public to restore credibility to the council, especially for the new council coming in, that this won't happen again because procedures are in place. And lastly, I want to be forthright. I was very disappointed last week when the message was not to do those steps, but instead to delay discussing this event until after the election. So people didn't want it to be an election issue. Well, now, folks, it is an election issue in a way because we didn't do the right thing when we found out the mistake was made. I'm sorry about that. I personally apologize to the public that took place, and I'm hoping that tonight we'll do the same and not just issue a statement that there was an error in procedure, but say to the public, we are actually sorry that took place, and not assume that we're sorry, and also confirm that the procedures are in place so it won't happen again. And also, I think to be fair as well, I personally would like to publicly thank the Council of Canadians who brought the message forward and discovered the error process so that we could do something to fix it. I'm just disappointed it took us this long to fix it. So thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Erickson.
I take responsibility as well because I was at the meeting where the vote took place. Although I didn't support it, I should have followed up because I assumed that it was a matter of closed committee that we're not allowed to talk about those. So now that we know that the motion was passed incorrectly, I feel less restrained to indicate that we should have fixed it sooner. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's the message that I tried to convey to council. There's enough responsibility for all to go around, and that would have been a good point, Randy, had you been a little, more perceptive on that and called us on it. That's really what should have happened and saved this whole incident. But nevertheless,
I did vote against it, and I did say it was wrong at the time, and you pushed it forward. You also, last Monday, refused to allow it to go on the agenda last Monday night. We needed unanimous consent of council.
didn't it just
So don't hide behind the public process now. When we did the wrong thing then, we need to fix this publicly and move on.
calm down? There's nobody in the hall. You have a microphone. It's a council chamber. You're a councillor.
Yeah, you're the mayor, you're supposed to be. You're the one that provides
Listen,
leadership.
Randy, we can all take responsibility in this one.
Always has.
Councillor Erickson, I'm sorry for the interruption. Councillor Dickinson, give somebody a chance.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have many concerns when I start looking backwards at how we've arrived at the place we are tonight. As much as it's sometimes desirable to run meetings in a very kind of collegial and convivial way, we have a procedural bylaw that asks us to follow the rules. The rules are set out to increase our transparency to the public, among other things, to allow us to access our municipal government in a fair and even-handed way. And I think before we jump straight to apologizing to the public, I think we should be very clear about what we're apologizing about. Now, I'm not a lawyer, nor am I an expert in procedural practices. I wouldn't stand next to the city clerk and pretend that I could do her job for 5 seconds. However, I do have some questions that I think I would like answered. Because I believe, and from what I've heard and read in the media, that one of the great concerns is that we discussed in a private session of CIC a matter that was not fitting to be discussed. And I don't believe actually that is correct, because I believe when you as chair brought up the issue you wanted to talk about, that it was your concern that the letter from the the Canadian Chamber of Commerce was going to be destructive to the relationship you had with the mayors of Quebec.
Right.
I believe that that's one of the grounds covered through the Privacy Commission, that you're actually allowed to talk about that before you bring it to the public, before you craft a letter that then gets debated openly in the public. So I had no problem with that being added to the agenda, even though it wasn't added to the agenda in a formally appropriate way. We probably would have voted unanimously to do it. We probably would have added it to the agenda in an appropriate way if we had been given the chance, but we just kind of pushed right on through that point. My concern, however, after we amended the letter, after we voted on it, and the debate wasn't long, and we didn't have a lot of time to think about it, But my great concern was that it did not come back after CIC to a regular council meeting or a special council meeting, as it says in our procedural bylaw that all matters must. And that is the point in time where it would have been made clear that the public could come in and have their say on the issue and watch us debate the issue. So I just want to be very clear that procedural irregularities happen, in my opinion, and that the letter should be ruled out of order and rescinded. But it should be ruled out of order and rescinded because it failed to be ratified through council consideration at a regular council meeting after it was discussed, I think appropriately, in a closed CIC session. And I'd be happy to make a motion to that effect.
Very good. Motion on the floor that it be rescinded. Is that what your motion is? Seconded by Councilor McDermott, that the letter that was sent to the Prime Minister through the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, that letter and the content be rescinded. That's the motion. On the question, Councillor Keenan.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to understand what our next step is if we rescind this letter, because that will go a long ways to determining how I will vote on this. So, I'll just give my perspective. I'm going to go back and start about why this is important to me and why I voted the way I did that night. I think we've accepted that it should have been done in an open session. Wouldn't have changed my vote one bit. And I hope it wouldn't change other people's votes as to how they voted regarding this letter on that evening. So, I've got two daughters. And last September, I put one on an airplane to Calgary. This past week, I loaded a truck to send another one to Halifax. The reason that that's happened is because we have no opportunity in this province. Our opportunities are limited, and we need to get our kids home. We need to provide opportunities for our children, for others to earn a living, and that's why it's important to me that we address this issue. It's not good enough for me just to let this go and say, oh, we made a mistake in there. The issue is still with us. And I, for one, want to stand and say, I am definitely for the pipeline following the NED and the legislative process that it has to undergo. I think the reason that this came up by the Council of Canadians didn't have so much to do with the fact that it was done in a private session. It's that they don't like the result. And I think that the last paragraph of this letter is pretty clear. It says, Mr. Trudeau, we're not calling on you to give energy special treatment.
Can you read that slowly? You're going too fast, and I think that's an important letter part right there.
We're not calling on you to give energy special treatment. The project must undergo rigorous scrutiny and consultation through the NEB process to determine and plan for potential risks and impacts. We acknowledge in the letter that we're not asking anybody to pass anything that doesn't meet the regulatory process. However, once that process has been completed and the file has been sent for cabinet for your review, we simply ask that you make that decision based on evidence and the national interest. And I would add to that the interest of our province and the economy in our province. So I want to make those comments. I don't know if there will be an amendment offered that we talk about the letter, but I certainly am not. I'm not willing to just rescind the letter and say no, we don't support that, because I do support that. Thank you.
And there will be another opportunity for another motion to deal with that, if that's what you choose to do. Councillor Brandy.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. I'm just curious about the procedure and what's going to take place. So if the letter is rescinded, and you've indicated that the Canadian Chamber of Commerce received a number of correspondence from across Canada, but then did not move forward with this to the Prime Minister. This particular letter was in support of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce to the Prime Minister. So in actual fact, is it actually a viable, but I don't understand, what are the, like Councillor Keenan asked, what's the next steps and the procedure? Is it actually a real letter at that point?
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, whichever we would look at it, we don't deal with this all that very often, so this is like almost new
So my
ground.
question is, I guess that's to be debated and what council's wishes. So if we send the letter and we debate it and we decide to send the letter, it's going to, back to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, to the Prime Minister, but even the Canadian Chamber of Commerce is not endorsing it.
We could rescind, in my interpretation.
I just have a dilemma.
Yeah, my interpretation is we can rescind the letter, but I think what Dan is saying is that his decision was based on something that he doesn't mind doing out here, and it's a matter of, you want to vote on the pipeline, then the people that supported it back there support it up here. As far as redoing a letter and sending it, there's no campaign. The Chamber of Commerce would get that letter and they say, oh, that was 3 months ago, we ended this, we didn't do it anymore. So you could send it to the local Chamber of Commerce, who is acting on our behalf with Ignite, who's been doing what they're doing. But Greg, John, and Mike.
I just want to reiterate, Your Worship, that the item on the floor that we're debating is whether the letter is in order or not. And that's it. If you want to reintroduce the letter, I would suggest you use our current council and committee system and reintroduce it in public safety and the environment, where it can be introduced appropriately through notice to the agenda and supported by a staff report, and then brought to the public's attention after that.
Okay, we got to get clarification that we know what we're doing. When you mentioned this, and I put it as a motion, you did use the word rescind, and that's what the motion says, is to rescind the motion, and it was seconded.
Well, to be clear, I was rescinding the motion because the file dated bylaw A1411 sub 5.
Yeah.
Not for any of the information that's currently in front of me, because that doesn't say why.
Okay, so according to the city clerk, the motion is to rescind. If that passes, then somebody can make a motion to put it on the floor to bring it back to the safety committee. Or, if you want to be as bold as you can, vote on it tonight. It's the pipeline or not.
It would be my preference, actually, that we wait until the next mandate to bring this item forward.
Okay.
Because I don't see us having the item on the agenda to bring anything forward except for what's being considered right now. Unless somebody wants to move an additional item and we unanimously support it. But I can tell you right now, it will be unanimous.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what all the conversation's about. I mean, there's an expectation and, we're not even going to deal with it again. But that's fine. The motion on the floor is to rescind the motion, right? And, while you're rescinding, you've got the public here and the media is here. If you want to state that you're supporting it and wait for it to come back to safety, then it's fine. Let the public know what you're thinking and how you're feeling. And there's nothing wrong with that. So it will come through the committee channel as it's supposed to, if there's a motion made, and it'll be dealt with at that level. CIC. Yeah. So, anybody further to speak on rescinding the motion? John?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess, yeah, from a clarification point of view, look, I think there are merits about having it out of this council since we started it in terms of having that conversation. But ultimately, I have to agree with Councillor Erickson. I think that from a process point of view, I actually kind of wonder, do we even need to rescind it? I mean, is it a valid letter? I know it's a letter. I know it's a real letter. It's a physical form. But under the processes of the bylaw, is it a real letter or just a ghost letter? My feeling is we vote on the appropriateness, and I guess in the words of Councillor Erickson, is to rescind it, but it's really about the appropriateness of the process that this happened. And that vote will acknowledge, I guess, that the process was not appropriate. And then from there, I guess it's a matter of what the proper procedure is to go forward. If it means going back to public safety and the environment, then that's the appropriate means for it. Or if it has to come back to CIC. But I think right now the motion on the table has less to do about the content of the letter, about council support on the letter, but to do with the letter itself and the process in which it was born. And that's what I would like to have this vote on.
All right, just to be the accommodating chair that I am, with the permission of the seconder, if you want to withdraw, Greg, and let John make the motion to what he said, so we're all voting on exactly what you want.
Your worship, you just reiterated what I said, so I approve to formally call the question.
Councillor O'Brien first. I recognize you, and Councillor McConaughey.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not going to repeat some of the debate here tonight, but to me it's clear. I mean, we had a process error. The letter, I did have the letter amended, but council agreed back then to include the clauses about the NEB regulations, and to me that includes, well, everything that it implies, including obligations to First Nations treaty rights. But having said that, the motion is pretty clear to me here tonight. It's to rescind the letter. And the letter was originally debated to be at a request of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce through the local Chamber of Commerce. And they didn't send the letter, so to me that's moot right now. So their request is moot, it's gone, it's vaporized at this time. That doesn't mean that people may not support a pipeline project, but that to me is for a debate for another council, for another group to come forward, for council, as we say, to bring through an agenda item, through the proper standing committee to say that this is something that a councillor wants to debate and bring forward. But to me right now it's moot, it's vaporized. The letter in physical form or e-form should be rescinded and the process terminated for the time being.
And this is a procedural question, so according to what you're saying, I'm trying to think of what Dan is saying. So if he votes against the motion to, or if he votes in favor of the motion to rescind, he really doesn't get an opportunity to take it to that.
He stated his position as I have, and
Okay, Councillor McConaughey.
Thank you, Worship. Well, yeah, I mean, at a later date, which I'm not going to take part in, maybe, I mean, you could have a declaration day where you are on this issue and you know, hang it high on the bell tower. Boy, this is like a drama and a comedy and a tragedy all wrapped into one. I mean, the drama is, you know, there were several people made mistakes. Obviously, you know, it was introduced by you, talked by the city administrator, acting, and the clerk. You know, I don't know what people have to do with it, but you know, somewhere we got it all there, and then I mean, it's a failure of, you know, the 12 of us not to sort of pick up and say, hey, we shouldn't vote on this here. So I'm disappointed in myself, I can honestly say. But it's kind of a comedy in the sense that really the letter didn't go anywhere. It's kind of hilarious in itself. Such a big issue becomes nothing. And then it's a tragedy in some ways because we're left with people who think that we do all this stuff behind closed doors and we make all these decisions and we try to hide it from the public, which is so far from the truth. I mean, virtually everything that comes up is justified why it's in the closed session when it's on the agenda. It is truly just those things that sort of just pop up at the last minute. And it could be a discussion on just, somebody says, you know, I met with the deputy premier or something like that. And, but hardly anything doesn't go through that test, you know. And this is just one of those exceptions that happened, and we should have caught it. So it's tragic that it would lead to people being undermining their faith in us because of a rare occasion. So look, why wouldn't you rescind in a sense, and then just reboot the process, right? You know, you rescind it and never happened, and then you have the next council figure out where they are on this. And maybe that helps, maybe it doesn't, whatever, you know, but quite frankly, that's for the rest of you to decide later point. So, I'm in favor of rescinding.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks, Councillor Chase, and Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's unfortunate the way this displayed it, and I'll certainly take my responsibility, and I'm not looking at point your fingers, close the door, was a lot more meeting, so I said I'll do that. What's unfortunate is we're not having the real conversation that we need to have as in Brunswickers in regards to this pipeline. We need jobs. We told the story about his 2 daughters. I have 2 daughters, and I'm sure if things don't change, I'll be doing the same thing in a few years. And we need, as a council, to have this conversation at some point. We are the closest elected officials to the people. We're neighbors, our friends. We see them every day. So I think we do have a part. We need to have this conversation sooner than later. And I'll certainly be supporting when it comes forward, like I did on those doors.
Councillor Chase?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. And I wasn't planning to speak on this, but I do acknowledge, my part in the procedural error, and I regret that took place. But like Councillor Keenan and Councillor Hicks, I have a son that I see him maybe 4 weeks a year because he works in Europe, and another son who doesn't have a job. So, that's neither here nor there. I do support rescissions because I think it's important to put this behind us and to ensure that our procedures are clarified henceforward.
Councillor Keenan?
Thanks, and I appreciate being able to speak again. Councillor Erickson made some good points in regards to a process we could follow. I think that's what I wanted to have, is some solution to move forward, so I do appreciate that. It's a good idea. And I do acknowledge that I'm not sure we have any other alternative but to rescind the approval that we gave in closed. So I think I'll take his advisement under consideration and perhaps bring back a motion at a future date.
Councillor Rogers?
Clearly rescinding for the procedural reasons that Councillor Erickson outlined and others have supported is the route that we have to take. I also think to have this discussion in an informed way through the proper committee system where evidence is presented to us from staff, and we also have the opportunity to seek out our own evidence, is also the proper way to go. I think if we had a discussion prematurely on this issue, too much emotion would take over, as opposed to looking at some of the hard facts that need to be considered. So I support going through the committee system. And I think I'd like to add to sort of end on a somewhat positive note. I too have 2 daughters. God willing, if they choose, they'll have an opportunity to stay here. And my heart goes out, like truly my heart goes out, because I'm looking ahead 5 to 10 years and thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to be putting my daughter on a plane? Am I going to be putting another daughter, packing another daughter up? And if they want to stay, I want there to be opportunities. But I have faith in some of the other things that this council is doing, and that some of our partners are doing in the economic development sector, and in the university sector, and in the arts and culture sector, and the many, many sectors that our city is promoting. I have faith that some of those efforts are going to come to fruition, and that there are going to be lots of opportunities for our children. I don't think we don't need to hang our hat on one. Perhaps one will be an option. I'd be very interested in engaging in that discussion through the proper mechanism, but one thing that will always be top of mind for me is that we're growing lots of opportunities here. We've done some amazing things here at this council over the last 4 years to put into motion a really viable knowledge sector, and more than viable, an exciting knowledge sector. We're making investments in a lot of our different sectors because we see the opportunities there. And so I have faith that they're going to come to fruition as well. So I guess I felt to me it was getting kind of depressed, guys, over here. And I think we're doing some really good things. And I look forward to what's ahead in all of them. And I look forward to this discussion because this is potentially another piece of the puzzle.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. Everybody said.
Marilyn? Sorry, go ahead.
I won't interrupt you either. We had a process, it's flawed. We know we made a mistake. We got to go back and fix it. Therefore, we got to go back to the Public Safety Committee. We did a lot of talking and a lot of thought in our committee system. We're not using it. We got to use the committee system for these items, for all these items. Come to CIC, then come to the floor. That's the process. That's the process we have to use. In regards to rescinding a letter, we rescind the letter for a letter that wasn't even sent. So I'm going to vote to rescind the letter. And we should start back in public safety where it should have landed, and we'll go forward. Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, Marilyn, sorry, Councilor
Yeah,
Curtin.
me, yes, said best for last day. Anyway, this to me I find absolutely fascinating and one of the most asinine council meetings ever attended. And, we should never be here tonight debating this. This is just absolutely ridiculous, and I can't say how ridiculous. Now, having said that, I was the only councillor, I believe, that was not there on that January 25th meeting where this decision was made. I would like to think, had I been there, I might have been the one sane person in the room that called a point of order. However, I still have the floor, Mandy. However, I'm not so sure I would have called a point of order because we had a room full of our professional managers, solicitors, all the councillors except myself, the mayor. I mean, we've been down this route before. This isn't the first time. And any one of us could have called a point of order or said, this is not appropriate to discuss this in closed session. So the responsibility for that does not rest entirely on the mayor. It rests on each and every one that was in the room at that time. That's the first thing I want to say. I have 3 points here I want to make. That's the first one. The second point I want to make is we're here debating a letter that was never sent. I mean, how dumb is that? You know, like that's the second thing. And I guess, if it seems to be a motion to rescind the letter that we didn't send or didn't get to the Prime Minister in the first place, okay, I'm going to support to rescind that letter. The final point is this. We're talking about a pipeline here. And if I recall correctly, I did attend a Cities of New Brunswick Association meeting where they did have some people in talking about the pipeline. However, that never came down to the city, and I believe that at one point, we even asked them to come in and do a presentation, and they said, no, it wasn't going to be coming through our city, so we wouldn't be affected by it, or something to that extent. They weren't exact words, but something along that line. Now, on one hand, we have people saying, oh, we want the pipeline, it's going to create jobs, and that's fine and dandy. I have a son that was out west too working. But on the other hand, we want employment here, and suppose there was a pipeline spill or breakage, and what about our watersheds? What good is a province if our water's all contaminated? And I'm not saying that's going to happen, because I understand there's a fair amount of safeguards in place and all that.
All right.
But I'm not debating the pipeline tonight, okay? And that's not
You could have fooled me. Listen.
what I'm saying is leave that portion for another council when we can have public presentation and have it all out there in the open and then make those decisions based upon the information.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So
Listen.
that's it. I have my say.
Anybody that has this motion wants to speak to the motion, and the motion is to rescind it, not to debate it, which will happen, I guess, if there's another motion made at another time. Are you ready for the question on the motion to rescind? And are you very clear what we're voting on? Ready? All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Ready again? Rick? There's no other motion? Dan?
I'll bring it in.
If I may do my concluding remarks then, if everybody's finished, because I didn't have an opportunity. This is on the heels of Marilyn's comments. And it was the editorial on the Natural Resources Task Force that I sent everybody today for Mr. Shaw, who was here present. And I think that it's interesting, and I think it's very important that this information be made public as well. And it is on their webpage, and it is on their social media site, and they are making it public. It's it deals with Ignite Fredericton, the region's economic development agency, has been working with City Council to bring information about Energy East and other natural resource development projects to a variety of stakeholders in the region, and to inform the public about the positive role natural resource development can play in the economic future of our region. Now, it says that Ignite Fredericton's mandate is to support entrepreneurs, attract and retain skilled workers through immigration, support economic development through strategic initiatives. This is the important part. On March the 31st, Ignite Fredericton and the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce made a public presentation to City Council outlining the model for a natural resources task force. What's going on? All right. Then let me say this. Let me say this to women if you don't want me to say anything. It's just a personal opinion. You know what? You've got an election campaign. You got 1 week to go. And what I find so sad about this is you're not talking about streets, and you're not talking about recreation, you're not talking about this, you're talking about the pipeline. But you know what? You've got 7 days before the election. You knock on a door and somebody asks you, tell them. If that's how you feel. I mean, there are people in this council chamber that feels that way. Well, share it with the public. I'm certain when I'm talking to somebody and they ask me about the pipeline, I don't beat around the bush. I tell them how I feel about it. If that's going to determine your vote, then that's so be it. It's the same with Councillor O'Brien. But nevertheless, you know what? We've learned our lesson. I think everybody's apologized. We've made ourselves look foolish. And Councillor Rogers, you're absolutely, we've done so many great things, so many good things. We don't talk behind closed doors, and we are transparent. We're taking everything to the public like we've never done before. This happens, and look what happens in the last week of the election. It's like we're secretive. It's like we're holding private meetings, like doing the business. You know what? That's the unfortunate thing, because that's not what this council's all about. So, we'll go back in and we'll do the other agenda item. For all of those that showed up, thank you. And procedurally, what's going to happen is that it's going to be discussed in a council and committee meeting on an agenda open to the public after the election, and it'll be dealt with. Thank you very much.